Welcome to the Savvy Leader Podcast, the place for growth, learning, and inspiration for leaders just like you. I'm your host, Kristin Gallatin, and each week we will dive into the grit, grace, and gratitude it takes to become the savvy leader you were always meant to be. Hey, you guys, welcome to this special series of the Savvy Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Kristin Gallatin. Today, we're starting something a little new. I'm going to flash back to the beginnings. Last week, we talked about money mindset and how I moved from scarcity to more of a money strategy. And then I thought it would be really fun to start exploring the who's, how's, what's, and why's behind all the decisions I've made along my journey and to truly honor all of that within. So I'm starting a new mini-series that will complement the standard episodes that come out on Fridays. You'll see this come out midweek sometime, a little bit shorter, a little bit punchier, and definitely more to the point. I'm hoping to share some insights that maybe you can relate to or that you find interesting or helpful in your own journey so we can all move forward together. So if you're joining me today, you likely lead a very busy life. I bet you're ambitious, you're driven, and you're just trying to figure out how the heck to lead with courage, grace, and even competence without completely losing your mind and yourself in that process. I am 54 years old. That's right. Right now, my office is in an albeit somewhat fancy RV. We're parked somewhere in the continental U.S. My husband and I are traveling this country, running a real estate brokerage, a marketing company, a YouTube travel vlog, and this podcast. It looks a lot like freedom, you guys, and it actually really feels like my kind of freedom too. But if I had to describe my entire life in one phrase, it would be this: never say never. Because honestly, I myself, I don't really know how to quit. I don't always know how to stop. Not ever. And I'm going to try to explain how that works in my brain and why, because most people associate quitting with failure. For myself, it doesn't really have anything to do with that. It's more about the commitment. And to never say never is more of a deep-seated survival mechanism. It was actually my first job, surviving. That's right. When I look back on the years that I grew up in the 70s and 80s, they were the best. I always look back on those times and I feel so lucky. We got to grow up with the best music, the best fashion, and absolutely, bar none, the best hairdos. We were truly the lucky ones. We grew up in an age of exploration and innovation, and it was incredible. Think about it. That time felt limitless. We didn't have social media telling us what we should be doing, and there was no internet to suck up all of our time and attention. Our connections were tangible. If you wanted to talk to someone, you went to their house completely unannounced. Or you tied yourself to a landline phone. We were forced to be present, to look people in the eye, and to be creative with how we spent our time. This was also when I met my now husband, Eric, which is a whole nother story for a different day. But I grew up in what would be called the average dysfunctional family of that time, where fathers didn't really know how to father and siblings certainly didn't hold back. I had a lot of anxiety growing up, and I really think that most kids did. We just didn't really have the words to describe it, and we didn't take the time to talk about it. We were too busy listening to amazing music and navigating our life. The overwhelm, though, gosh, it could be so paralyzing for me. I remember trying to explain this feeling to my mom. I was pretty young, like 7 or 8, and I was trying to share with her how it felt. Like I was grasping onto something with my little hands that was much, much too big to hold on to, and I was losing my grip. And I would say to Mom, I feel like I just can't wrap my hands around this feeling. And I just trying to wrap my head around it was hard enough. And as hard as she tried to understand and help me through it, honestly, she had so many other things going on that her attention was diverted quite quickly. And like I said, we didn't talk about anxiety much then. I'm glad that it's a better conversation today, but we didn't know what to do with it or how to handle it. I even remember this nightmare I had, so vividly. 50 years later, I can still see it and feel how I felt while it was happening. It was this vision of a vast blackness, like the whole earth was just consumed by darkness. And there was this long, long line of people, like everybody in the whole world, I thought. And they were just marching forward like zombies toward this ride, so to speak, that would ultimately lead to their death. It was awful. I was panicked. I was trying to stop people. I was trying to warn them. I was trying to keep people from getting on this ride, but they all just continued to march forward. They ignored me completely, and I didn't know what to do. I woke up in a panic, and I'll never forget it. And I often find myself remembering that dream during times of tribulation in our lives now. I mean, with so much going on, I can tell you that dream keeps popping up in my head, like people getting on this ride and they don't realize it's actually leading them to their death. And I got to get out there and stop them, but they won't listen to me. Anyway, those moments weren't just about fears, though. I think they were some of my earliest lessons. Things like empathy, clarity, urgency. That little girl was pretty intuitive and observant, but also confused about the trajectory of our lives at that time. At the time, I was probably thinking about my own family because we were under such stress. But she was essentially the woman that I am today. And I know that we all say this when we look back on our years when we were young, and we don't really feel much different, do we? We look back on those teenage years or young adulthood thinking we could conquer the world, and we still kind of feel that way. Our bodies probably would say something different, but we've learned some things. Our minds, though, our minds are still there. And we remember those things and how we felt about experiences that we had then, like it happened yesterday. I even remember my grandmother's death. I was a young teen at the time. She passed away, a massive heart attack right there in our house. My dad was home. And after that, he fell into a very, very deep depression. He didn't work for 7 years. I don't actually think he ever really got back into the regular workforce for the rest of his life after that. My mom was left to figure things out on her own, and I was the youngest of 5 children, trying to process the death of someone that was close to me while still navigating those relentless, growing pains of a young teen. As I say, so difficult. Being bullied and mistreated, struggling, the anxiety. My response to all of that coming at me was to recede. I receded to my room. I isolated and protected myself from the outside that way. I found so much solace in that space. It was my protective space. And I retreated there often. And that was a shell that was a lot tougher to emerge from than I realized, or I don't think even my mom or my family knew what I was going through at the time. Getting out of that shell, though, and trusting the world again, I'm still working on it. That's right. I remember, though, feeling so deeply disconnected, no real sense of belonging anywhere. Even though I was a part of a big family, I just didn't feel like I belonged. I didn't feel like I had any real support system. Again, we were all just trying to figure it out, and our family was under some serious stress, financially and otherwise, and that was what birthed the power of independence for me, though, that time frame. I became incredibly independent, and am still. This became somewhat of a trademark for me later in my corporate gig. I was often referred to as the Lone Ranger, the blazer of new trails. I always continued in forward motion, always. Because back then, and even now, it doesn't matter how you feel. What matters is that you continue to get up. Even as a young person, I had to go to school. I had to do things. I couldn't just live in my room 24/7, 365 days a year. So my body inherently would just simply get up for me. It knew what needed to be done, and whether my mind was ready or not, my body would start moving and continue to move forward, navigating all that challenge. Sometime after that, though, after living with so much strife and disappointment as a young child, when I became an adult, I made some damn decisions. That's right. And I was going to do my very, very best to keep all of my commitments. I'm not perfect, absolutely. I forget things, I mispronounce, and I wish I were better. But one of my very favorite life's mottos is this: you can always do better than that. Or maybe better said, how about the snappy don't be lame. In a world where you can be anything, how about you just don't be lame? Start there. That ethos, that drive to always step up, help out, step in, and figure it out. It's why I have built the life that I now have. And the minute I saw an opportunity, I took it. I was 14 when I joined the school work program, and that was when my budding career started. It's never really stopped since then, you might guess. My life truly turned around, though, at about the age of 20 with the birth of my first daughter. She was a surprise, but she gave me an unbreakable purpose. That was the first time in my life I remember putting someone else's needs before my own. She helped me to center my priorities, and when I realized the abuse in my marriage at the time was never going to change, then it was time to forge yet a new path for me and my then 2 daughters at the time. I took that as another opportunity. So I spotted a promotion that I worked towards, and I knew if I would get that promotion, I would earn enough money to support us on my own. And that then was exactly what I did. I set my sights on the next step, on the next level, knowing full well that I was qualified to do the job, and also absolutely trusting that the universe had my back. And it did. I worked harder, I got promoted, I earned enough money, and I took care of us. That, my friends, was my first step into the corporate ladder. Of course, it meant not graduating from college. I was in college for a time, though as I got halfway through college, there was some necessary sacrifices that I needed to make, and that was one. I believe, though, now I regret that a little bit. I wished I had gone back and finished. It just wasn't in the cards for me at the time. That personal commitment became my professional superpower, though. Always the hard worker, always working hard, committed. I stayed with that same company for over 21 years. It was my uncredited intensive 21-year MBA program, if you will. I moved up the ladder pretty fast. Departmentally, corporately, I was a trainer, district operations, director, ultimately running a multi-million-dollar operation. It was during those 2 decades that I mastered the essentials of running a business. I learned financial literacy, culture, communication, planning, profitability, and so much more. Those things were right there for me in black and white. I took it in just like a sponge. I was an absolute sponge at the time, and the culture part, that's what was the most important to me. Fostering a culture where the people that worked with me wanted to work with me and do a good job, not just for the company, but for me personally. That was how I connected with my team. The decision to leave that company, though, in 2015 was the ultimate in strategic shifts for myself and my business. It was after my brother passed away and my daughter fell really ill. I realized the company's values were just so misaligned with my own personal sacrifices that I couldn't continue in that role. And I didn't quit because I couldn't do the job, mind you. I quit because the next step on the ladder would only take me further away from the things and the people that I cared about. I realized the value of my own time and the value of the people in my life. The savviest move any leader can make, you guys, is knowing when to walk away, even from success, when it compromises your core values. Being misaligned is a complete dysfunction in your life. So I took every piece of insight I had mastered and invested it right back into myself. That's right. I was armed, I was ready, and I wasn't afraid of doing the hard work. I'd already been doing it for 20 or 30 years by then. I'd been working hard for a long time, so I wasn't afraid. I became a realtor. That's right. I also supported my husband's launch of a painting company that eventually was quite successful, hitting millions of dollars in sales each year. But it was all consuming, that painting company, I'll tell you. For him, I handled project management, some HR, admin, marketing, all kinds of hats. We were a small business. We had to wear all the hats, as I'm sure you do too. All the skills that I learned from the gauntlet that I call corporate, I also launched a digital marketing company during that time and then co-founded Lead Network Professionals, a professional network company nonprofit that pulls together business leaders and provides support and systems to help people succeed. It's a huge passion project for me. Absolutely. But I started noticing this interesting paradox, As a realtor in any avenue where I was the solo, I noticed that just before I would reach what I would call the summit of success, whether in sales or at my corporate gig sometimes, I would often step to the side or find a new path, looking for excuses not to succeed. I've never really been a super competitive person, but what the hell was going on here? Was it fear? Was it a deep-seated need to be in service or sacrifice? Maybe I didn't know how to handle success. Maybe I didn't think I deserved it. I'm not sure. But this summit stepper paradox, we will be exploring in an episode later on. So stay tuned for that. But before I could solve all of that mindset BS though, life forced the ultimate pivot. In the summer of 2022, my husband was struck by a vehicle while riding his motorcycle on the way to a job site, and immediately, overnight, I became his primary caregiver, managing multiple businesses and his medical needs. My lifelong theme of service was completely tapped out. I'll tell you what, both credit cards were maxed. And it was then that my own health forced the final pivot. We made a strategic choice, and rather than stay in the rat race that we called our life at that time, we opted to shift all of our energy into a smaller space that would allow for a new kind of growth and purpose. We sold it all, you guys, and moved right here into this very RV. It was a conscious decision to create a sustainable life that allowed me to continue my caregiver role, travel for Eric's health to be in warmer climates, and also give us an opportunity to see some things we've never had a chance to see and engage in the life that we'd always loved. Road tripping, camping, wilderness, nature, freedom. And maximizing my service and mission through remote work, which brings us straight here to what? The Savvy Leader Podcast and all of the wonderful things that come along with that and with Lead. I love my lead. The lesson here, hardships, they don't define your failure. They forge your unbreakable commitment to serve and lead. Your voice matters. Your story proves that your challenges are your assets as a leader. And my daily mantra is this: I trust in God and I embrace the uncertainty on the other side. I know that true success requires faith and perseverance. We've just scratched the surface of my own journey, but every step was built on the foundation of action and learning. If you missed it, go on back and check out last week's episode where we dove into scarcity and strategy with money mindset shifts. And next week, we're putting on our business hats and moving into the heart of my career. That corporate gauntlet I mentioned, we're going to dig into that and break down those 21 years of hustle and blazing new trails and exactly how I turned operational challenges into leadership mastery, how I won over my team, how I shifted a culture and made a difference. Tune in next week for Running the Gauntlet of Corporate, turning 21 years of hustle into leadership mastery. Until next time, keep leading well. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Savvy Leader Podcast. Be sure to check the description below for any links or resources we mentioned today. And for even more inspiration and tools to help you on your own leadership journey, come on over and join the conversation in the Savvy Leaders Lounge. That's savvyleaderslounge.com, and we'll see you next time.